Podcasts can change your business, but most people are just doing it wrong. You've probably heard the usual advice. Get a media kit, ask good questions, get on more podcasts. But here's the thing. That's just scratching the surface. If your podcast is not building your brand, if it's not getting you more leads, if it's not getting you more business, it's not that the strategy is wrong. It's that you're doing it wrong. Today, we're going to be diving into the game-changing strategies that you've been missing. And spoiler alert, it's not who you talk to, it's how you talk to them, the questions that you ask. Let's unlock the secrets to podcasting success starting now. All right, let's get into the first question, Bo.
Okay, the first question says, what's the best way to get on other people's podcasts? How do I find them / reach out to them?
Well, first and foremost, what I would do is very easily just Google podcasts in the field that you're looking into getting featured on. And most people right now that are watching and listening to this are in that real estate / mortgage business. And so if you Google real estate podcast right now, at the time of this recording, you are going to get thousands of people's podcasts right across the world. And believe me, if somebody has a podcast even in Dubai or Kansas and you're in Toronto, they still want to have you as a guest. Not all of them, but don't think just because they're, in a different city or a different country, they're not going to want you on their podcast. Because overall, most podcast hosts, and I'm going to say 95% of them, because 5% the Joe Rogans and the Lex Friedmans of the world, they don't need you reaching out to them. They have a flood of people wanting to get on their podcast, and nor are you trying to get on those podcasts. Because what you want to do is, once you get on other people's podcasts, you're able to take content from that conversation. And it's so easy to cut content now with AI, other technology that's out there. And it's also easier because of the fact that somebody's asking you questions. So number one is just Googling it. Number two is go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I generally use Spotify as my podcast place to listen to episodes, and just search real estate podcasts. You're going to get a huge list. You're then going to need to Google those names. That's why I started with Google, because you're going to need to Google those podcast names to get the contact info to send out emails to try to get on that person's podcast. And then the third way is all the social media platforms. Just start off with Instagram, and you can simply just go into the search function of Instagram, search the hashtag real estate podcast, mortgage podcast. You're going to get a bunch of accounts. Start clicking on those accounts, DM them. And here's a quick little tip for you. Rather than writing them a message, because they're a podcast host, they're going to want to actually hear your voice. So why not just give it to them up front? Do a little voice note in Instagram, and you're going to say, Clyde, the podcast host, I noticed that you have a podcast talking about how to invest into real estate, how to buy, how to get mortgages. I would love to be a guest. Here's some things that I've done in the past, and then drop them links. Oh, what's next?
Next question is it necessary to send a media kit when reaching out to podcast hosts for a guest feature? Or are there alternative approaches that might be more effective?
Yeah, so first and foremost, is it necessary? No. Is it beneficial? Yes. You could easily put in to ChatGPT, I'm looking into getting onto other people's podcasts, and I need to create a media kit. What are the most important aspects of a media kit? And as well, ChatGPT, just give me a preview of one that you can send to me. Give me 7 previews. ChatGPT now will not only give you the most important aspects of a media kit, but it will give you images to show you how they look. Then go to a website like Fiverr.com. Okay? You can even use AI with ChatGPT and Canva to create that media kit. It's not necessary, but it's beneficial. It looks good. With a media kit, it's even more beneficial if you've already been on other people's podcasts, because then you can send those types of links, as well as if you have a lot of awards in your real estate business or your mortgage business, you'd want to put all that stuff in your media kit. Some alternative ways is, if you've been on other people's podcasts, you can simply just DM, private message on LinkedIn, send a message on Facebook, send a message on TikTok with the links of the podcast that you've been on. Because as a podcast host who, for I think about 150 to 200 episodes, I had guests, I always chose the people, or they got my awareness as a host with the people that sent me links that they've, of past podcasts that they've been on. Bo?
Next question. What's the message that I should focus on getting across to viewers when I film my podcast?
Education. You have to give value. Now, value comes in a myriad of different ways. It could come through education. It could come through entertainment. A lot of people do a great job with edutainment, which is kind of the hybrid of both. I personally went down the route of just educating people. And so start off with, unless you have, some cool different skills, like a comedic skill, you can do the entertainment stuff. But the messaging should be to educate the public. How do you do that? Give away. So this is, as a podcast host, what you want to do is give away all the trade secrets. Okay, and I'm doing air quotes for my guys and gals in the car right now. You want to give away all the information that you know about the field that you're in. Now, for somebody who's starting out, and even for my veterans in the business, there's still a lot of things that you don't know. And so bring on the guests that know that, so you could be the messenger of the information. The most effective tool that I had when I was bringing on guests, and even this podcast, and in the comments, please let me know. And if it's even that, Jazz, you're really garbage at this, I'm okay. I'm a big boy. I can handle the constructive criticism. But the most effective tool was the fact that I was always curious. And because of my curious nature in general, when I brought on guests, I was asking questions about everything, about the process of buying, selling, investing, financing, getting 57 doors when it comes to investing into real estate. And what happened over time, and pretty quickly, actually, I might add. It didn't happen overnight, but it didn't take 7 years either. Within probably the first year, which was probably about, episode 30, episode 40, because I did it weekly, I had clients reaching out to me and saying, hey, Jazz, I saw that podcast. Can you get me more information on that type of investment? Hey, can you put me in touch with the guest? I want to think about refinancing. They started to reach out to me. It became the silent salesperson. I don't think I've ever said that before, Bobo, but I think that's what it is. You know what the content does? It's a silent salesperson for you. What do I mean by that? Is that you don't have to be doing the speaking at 3:00 in the morning live. Someone actually just taps into one of your videos on YouTube, a short form piece of content on social media, or listens to your podcast, and they now get to make the decision if they're ready. Do they want to do it with you? But it all starts with giving away all the information for free. Because I have news for you guys and gals. The public can already get the information. It's already out there on YouTube with other people's podcasts and videos. It's already out on Google. It's already out on AI. But there's not a lot of people who are deciphering that information, as well as the people who are watching it, they don't connect with all the people that are online right now. And so that is where your opportunity may lie, is by giving away all the information for free and then letting people make an informed quality decision themselves.
The next question says, I recently filmed a podcast episode with a small business owner, but I don't feel like I got any value from doing it. Do you think I should still do recordings with small business owners?
The short answer, Yes. And here's why. See, you're in the business of helping people buy, sell, invest, or finance. But the key word in what I said there is people. And so small business owners, they themselves are possibly thinking about buying, selling, or investing. However, because they're a small business owner, they also meet a lot of people. And I got news for you. Not a lot of people reach out to small business owners to have them on a podcast. The florist, the baker, the dentist, the local superintendent at the school, the pizza shop owner, the restaurant owner, and the electrician, the plumber. They don't get asked to be on people's podcasts. However, when you when you ask them to be on your podcast, give them the recording, we all have this want to be a little celebrity, or, we want to see ourselves on camera. We want to then show off and send it to people. And so what happens is when that plumber, that baker, that florist sends it to their network, their email list, heck, who knows? They might even just put like a little QR code on where the cashier is and say, hey, you could watch this recording of us, right? You can provide them with the QR code. When someone else watches it, you have a huge probability of someone watching it and saying, oh, well, I wonder who that person who's hosting them. Let me do what's known as called a digital deep dive. They then look at, oh, Jazz was hosting that podcast. Who is this Jazz guy? Oh, man, you know what? I don't like him. Okay. Or, again, it could also happen, and it happens all the time, which is, well, I kind of like his style. Let me find out a little bit more. Oh, wow, he also talks to economists. He's also talking to other finance people. And then they start to do that deep dive, and that's how you build community. Now you got more awareness. The name of the game in sales, is to get more people's awareness. Because without their awareness, you can never, ever sell them anything, let alone the biggest transaction in most people's lives. You're not going to be able to do that just with somebody buying it online. They're not buying a mug. They're not buying a mic or a camera here that they can just buy online. There's not that much involved. They do a little bit of research. When it comes to real estate, it's a big ticket item. They want to make sure that the person that they're doing business with knows what he or she is talking about, and you can showcase that up front without telling them. Without telling them, you can showcase it up front with these long-form recordings. Oh.
The last question we have for today. If my goal is to generate business from recording a podcast with a guest by providing value, what questions should I be asking my guests?
So I always go with the easiest way to become a podcast host to elicit the most deep conversations, which is using the 5 questions, starting with what, where, when, how, and why. What, where, when, how, and why. And the reason is because when you're speaking with a guest, they can't answer yes or no. Those are known as open-ended questions. Now, be careful as a podcast host. There's nothing wrong with writing the questions down, but make sure you're also listening, because some of the best questions come out of the answer that the guest gave you. So I like to use the what, when, where, how, and why method just as kind of pointers for me to kind of direct the conversation, but I'm intently listening because I know for sure that there's going to be an additional 2 to 3 questions, if not more, that come out of the answer that the person gave you. And so when you want to make sure that you give a lot of value to the viewers, understand that value for people is very subjective. And so the best way to get around that metric of is it valuable or not is put out as much as you possibly can. It's one of the main reasons me and the crew here, we went from bi-weekly, I started weekly, then I went bi-weekly, and now I think 6 months ago, 5 months ago, we came back to weekly. Why? Because we're still, we want to always be iterating and adjusting. And so to do that, we need more data. And the best way to get the data is put out more content. And so then you can start to get the feedback. Did you say that was the last question, Bo? All right, guys, I look forward to the podcast next week. As always, make sure to leave a comment and share this episode with one friend, colleague, or family member. Have the best week ever.